Well, Mike, good to see you as always. And we're going to start things off this week with your Notre Dame football recruiting update here on WSBT Radio and on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel by offering your thoughts and maybe an update on the Irish trying to keep Deuce Knight, their 2025 quarterback commit, in the class. There's a lot of rumblings. I saw your colleague Steve Wilfong had a thought on the situation. How would you sum it up right now?
Yeah, I mean, Darren, we could spend an hour on this. I'm just going to be completely honest. We missed this last week. This interview, Darren, because I was like, there's nothing going on. Like there was nothing really to talk about, nothing new. And then the Deuce Knight thing was still in its because we usually record this on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and we still just a couple of days fresh where it was like, all right, Knight might go to Auburn. I was like, still kind of taboo to talk about it. I was like, I don't even know what to say, and I'm still sitting here, Darren. Now that it's very public, right? You just mentioned Steve Wiltfong, my coworker at On 3. He logged a prediction for Knight to eventually flip to the Auburn Tigers. And so it's definitely much more of a public thing now. And it's not looking good, Darren. It's not looking good. And I first feel like, and I've talked about this on our Blue and Gold message board. I've talked about this in articles, talked about this on live shows of Blue and Gold recently. So now I want to do it for people who haven't seen or heard those things, your radio audience, people watching this YouTube video. Like, I feel like I got to apologize. I mean, I've been saying for the longest time the Knight was so locked in with Notre Dame. And I'd been saying, like, if he visits anywhere at the end of July, because he didn't visit anywhere in June, you know where he visited? Notre Dame. He was on campus like the entire month, and then, went to some camps and different, recruiting events and whatnot. Recruiting events being like Elite 11, Rivals Challenge, those types of things, not visits. It's like if he goes to a school at the end of July, it's game on. If not, guys, there's literally nothing to see here. I'm telling you, he's locked in. I was told a couple Fridays ago he wasn't going to visit anywhere the next day. Visits Auburn, and I think two or 3 days later visited Ole Miss. And it's very much game on in terms of him flipping. Like he's listed as a Notre Dame commit, but that's just kind of a formality type deal because he hasn't announced anything. He's very much a prospect who has a wide open recruitment. Darren, I would also project him to end up at Auburn right now, just based on where things are trending, talking to sources behind the scenes. And it is, it's a gut punch, to be just frank, like just how this switch has been flipped seemingly overnight from recruiting publicly. Like that was one of the last things that we saw from Deuce Knight in terms of like a public message about him with Notre Dame. It was recruiting Derek Meadows. Hey, he's committed to LSU on July 20th. It's not over yet. That was the message from Deuce Knight that he posted on Instagram. And just a week later, he's at Auburn, and then the flip looks to be on. So yeah, it's wild how fast this has come together, Darren, and we'll see where it goes from here. It's not over yet. Notre Dame's still battling all those things, but history tells us that this is not going to end well with the Irish. We'll see how it goes with Knight, but you definitely have a lot more optimism if you're Auburn right now than if you're Notre Dame.
Mike, is it fair to say that really Notre Dame has done nothing wrong? They have been clear with their message throughout. From their standpoint, they've done nothing different. Nothing has changed, but obviously something changed in the Deuce Knight camp. Fair to say.
Fair to say. The only thing I might disagree with is you're the very first statement about Notre Dame did nothing wrong. Sure, they could have done something better. And you can always do better, but I mean, there's, in talking to folks on the Notre Dame side of things, there's kind of just a shock factor of how this went down. Like I did a show on Tuesday night with Tim Hyde, and when we talked about this is the first time we had talked about it, together, publicly on air, and Tim was basically saying, I mean, it's a Mississippi kid. You got the SEC schools coming. What else did you? We all saw this coming. That's what Tim says. And I'm like, I get just the looking at it from 10,000 feet. You get a quarterback from Mississippi. Of course, the SEC schools are going to push. And of course, there's a good chance he flips, or maybe it's even likely he flips. And I get get where Tim's coming from on that, and probably many of you. But when you're in my shoes and I get to report maybe, I'm not trying to make myself sound cool or anything, but like I probably get to only report 20% of the things I hear. So there's been so many other things that I've been hearing specifically on Knight for the past year or so that have made me feel like, maybe not quite a year because he committed in September, but for the past several months, let's just say, that have made me feel so confident that this kid's going to Notre Dame. Like there's just no way. And then again, just as easy of a flip of a switch. Like that's what it's felt like, a complete 180. Yeah, I mean, I did an interview with him in early July. He told me flat out, I'm not planning on visiting other schools. I'm going to Notre Dame. Going to Notre Dame as in that's where I'm going to school. So again, it's not over yet. We will see where it goes from here, Mr. Pritchett. But the nation's number 38 overall player, number 7 quarterback, according to the 2025 On3 industry ranking, who's been committed to Notre Dame since September 18th. He is trending towards the Auburn Tigers of all places.
Mike, just following your reporting of Deuce Knight, and you've looked him in the eye, you've met him several times, and you've talked to him, and you just told what he has told you. Just me being the dumb guy who doesn't have any sources. You know what always concerned me about his recruitment? And you may think I'm crazy and silly, but I was always worried going back to when he was going to go to Nashville for that final year. He got supposedly homesick and then went back home. That just worried me throughout the process. Now, this may have nothing to do with that, but that was something that always concerned me through the process. And, Auburn is not in Mississippi, but it's pretty close by. And I was always worried about the SEC like you've talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing with that is, I think his coach went on record. The coach at Lipscomb Academy in Nashville went on record and said, it was just wanted to be near family. I heard it was due to kind of recruiting violation type deal. So if Deuce was going to be, I can't say that for a fact. That's just kind of what I heard. Sure. Maybe the coach that was the truth. Maybe this other thing is truth. I don't know. But I was still like, if Deuce is going to be ruled ineligible for his junior season, there's no point in just sitting around. Might as well go back. So we went back to George County in Lucedale, Mississippi. Had to sit out a couple games due to their own transfer kind of things. Like when you come back, you got to sit out some. I don't know, sit out 2 or 3 games and then play the rest of the season. So. Yeah, I think the bigger thing has been just going, like, again, I talked about with Hyde, like you look at it from 10,000 feet and you've seen recruiting processes for the past decade, 2 decades. Like if you're a Notre Dame fan, you watch it, you're like, kind of know how it goes. But it's different when you're the kid in the family and you're going through it for the first time. And it's just that it can be a different situation for you to like, okay, like Knight, I think playing in the SEC is a big deal to him now. It's like, well, why wasn't that before? That's kind of the logical 10,000 foot view on it. Well, why? I mean, you could have played the SEC this entire time, but for whatever reason, I think just going through the process, and especially here lately, that's something that you hear coming from that side of things, that playing in the SEC and staying close to home and is kind of coming up as a big factor for him.
Let me close this topic with this, and I don't need a long range answer here, a long answer. I'm just curious, if Deuce decommits, is it going to be difficult to get a 25 quarterback in his place?
No, they'll get someone. They'll get someone. Now, will it be to the caliber that Notre Dame fans like?
Sure.
From a ranking standpoint, whatever offers, the guys that Notre Dame's going to go after, not only at quarterback, but at receiver, they're going to be guys who are committed elsewhere. So if Notre Dame goes after, a kid who's committed to a powerhouse program, that sounds great. But if it's like a top G5 or like a low P4 team, then, I'm sure that's like kind of the barometers, like where are we flipping them from? And then you kind of go from there. So we'll see where it goes from here. But if Deuce Knight flips, I think Notre Dame will be prepared to move on whoever's next at the quarterback position in terms of names of these class of 2025 players. But I wouldn't expect it to be like that. I think it might, it might go into early senior season film.
I don't think you have anything to apologize for, because I have never seen a kid visit one school so many times, commit, and then walk away. I mean, he has to have the record for the most visits and then possibly decommitting. So, and you know what? We're dealing with 18-year-old kids. Things happen, Mike. Things happen.